Bonus episode. That's right. This is a bonus episode of The Word Made Fresh. We had one earlier this week where I talked with Reverend Thorne about all things MLK Sunday at Riverside. And in this bonus episode, I'm talking with our guest preacher. So, what are we waiting for? Let's go. Welcome back, everybody. Another episode of The Word Made Fresh. We are looking forward to this Sunday at the Riverside Church because it is, well, every Sunday is amazing, but this Sunday is going to have a few extra amazing things in it. One of them is our guest preacher, Reverend Rashad Raymand Moore, PhD. Reverend Moore, thanks so much for coming on, hanging out here, and then for joining us in just a few days at Riverside. How are you feeling? It's what, Wednesday right now? We're recording this. Sunday is a few days away. How are you feeling with the Wednesday to Sunday gap coming up?
I am excited. I must admit that I am one of those who's preparing a sermon Saturday morning or Friday night. And so being prepared earlier than usual is different, but I'm actually excited about coming to Riverside. It's like the opportunity of a lifetime, and I'm
Mm.
grateful for the invitation.
We feel the same having you with us. I've been just this morning and yesterday was going through First Baptist Church of Crown Heights, where you serve as pastor. I was on your website
All
and
right.
YouTube channel, and I was watching some of your live streams and catching your
Oh,
Christmas sermon from a few weeks ago in December, and some other ones as well. And
okay.
I'm eager to hear how you bring your prophetic self into the Riverside Church this coming Sunday.
Well, it is King Sunday, and it is one of I feel like it's as difficult as Resurrection Sunday, Palm Sunday. It's like one of those like high moments. And I was talking to a friend about it last night. He says, King Sunday is like Easter Sunday. Don't try anything new. And it's a high Sunday, but yet it's one of those Sundays that means really it means a lot to me. I am one who's been deeply shaped by the Black social gospel tradition. I am a graduate of Morehouse. I am a Baptist Black preacher. All of that, and so this is a day that I feel like we are really held to a high standard, right? To make sure that we kind of keep that voice and that tradition alive. And so that's how I'm coming. Recently, I've been reading a book called King's Vibrato by Maurice Wallace, I believe his name is, about the sonic life of Dr. King. And just thinking about the role of sound and the role that sound plays in history, the fact that so I come to this King moment, and lately I've been really thinking about the fact that I am 35 years old. I was born in 1990, and yet, even though I was born 27 years after King's assassination, his voice literally lives in my head as familiar as my parents' voice, right? And I think it's amazing that even in death, his voice has remained alive for so many generations that were unborn. And so I've been really thinking about the role of sound and thinking about how the sound of his voice has played a major role in history. Like, we've never heard the voice of Lincoln or Washington, right? And yet you can still hear the voice of King and feel the thunder and feel the hope. I was not born in 1963 when he gave the I Have a Dream speech, but I really feel like I was there. I've heard it so many times. I've lived. I feel like we've lived it, right? And that is still, even though it's kind of 21st century, I think it's also important to realize that there was a time when we did not have the opportunity to go back and hear voices of the past, and I think that we shouldn't
Mm.
take that for granted. And so this year, I'm thinking a lot about what does it mean to be a steward of the sound.
Ooh, ooh. Okay, you are inviting us all into not only this Sunday with the focus on Reverend King, but every just experience of a steward of the sound. And
Steward of the
I'm with
sound.
you. I was just going through some recordings of Dr. King just this past week, and even noticing the different tone in the recording of him reading the letter from Birmingham jail to the I Have a Dream speech to Beyond Vietnam, just as three different examples. It's the same voice, but it's a different sound because each of those
It is.
pieces are at clearly different points in his own trajectory.
And one of the things that Wallace points out, and I know that there's a recording of why Jesus calls a man a fool that he preached at Riverside. But if you listen to one of the points that Wallace makes is that if you listen to these various recordings, you can also see that even if King preached the same sermon twice in a different place, it was always different. And it's also because, and the thing about the recording that's different from the written word is that the preaching moment is a lived experience between the pulpit and the pew. And so that callback, so, the aha and the make it plain, go ahead, that is the pulpit and the pew preaching
Yeah.
together in a moment that's totally different than just reading a sermon. It's a lived
Mm.
experience. So,
This okay, we've turned this into a homiletics
okay,
class now. I love it. There is
gotcha.
obviously a distinct, yeah, the preached word versus the written word. Just the medium itself does something to us. Ooh. Say a bit more about what it is about King that has just shaped you and who you are. I mean, I know, well, 2012 you were Morehouse King Scholar at Morehouse
That's
College, so you've been there in the
okay.
space where he was. You went to seminary at Union and Teachers College for your PhD, so you've been right in the neighborhood of Riverside where King spent a bit of time, and
I've been through the
Abyssinian.
tunnel.
Yeah, you've been through the tunnel. Which I
Been
think
through
is
the
closed
tunnel.
now, by the way. They closed it off. I think
Are you
about,
serious?
yeah, I think it was maybe a
Oh,
little after you graduated that got closed off. Yeah.
okay. Wow. Okay, gotcha.
So not everyone gets to walk those footsteps of Dr. King, but you did. And so this Sunday, you're coming to a place where you look around and you say, "Ooh, he has stood here. He has preached this sermon here." And there's
Mhm.
always a unique weight any Sunday, but this Sunday, and I feel like you carry an awareness just with your journey. How what is it about King's work and legacy that continues to make you who you are and who you're becoming?
So going back to this notion of being a steward of the sound, I also believe that the sound is by far a standard. It is a standard by which I think I think every generation needs a standard. I think every generation finds its voice and tries different things by listening to the previous generation. Like you don't just come ex nihilo. You literally are trying to mimic someone until you find your own voice. And for many generations, King modeled that standard, a standard that he inherited from not only from his father and his grandfather, but Wallace would argue in this book that a part of his voice was also shaped by his mother, Alberta King, and his wife, and women as well. So you can't just say that he just got it from his daddy. And so I think we've inherited. So I think that in this moment, I think King holds the standard of what, for me, what black preaching and preaching general without qualifiers ought to be. I mean, standard of highly educated intellectual preaching, but very much deeply soulful. One of the things we share in common, I would say, is my preaching example is Samuel Dewitt Proctor. I know that's
Hmm.
probably old school, but
Oh, it's
that
good
kind
school.
of
I'm with you there. Yeah.
Hegel dialectic kind of thinking, I still aspire to that. But I think he holds a standard. And I think in this age, we have to hold it high. And as we hold it high, I think we also have a responsibility to pass it on to the
Yeah.
next generation.
Yeah. How do you just navigate a world where so many people only know like the Hallmark card version of Dr. King or the one day a year I have a dream Dr. King, and they forget about the debt he talked about first, or they realize there's more than just a quote pulled out of context. How do you just, yeah, it's one day, but I feel like this is a part of you every day. So how do you navigate people who just forget about the everyday and King is just a quote rather than the whole context?
I think that's the part where I talked to my spiritual director this week about preaching at Riverside and Fran Thiessen, and she was like, the people have to be like lit on fire. And I think that's another part of the prophetic call is to remind people of the king that many would like to forget. I mean, I think it's the king, 1967, why I opposed the war in Vietnam. But I also realized the reason why people want to forget that king is because he's just so inconvenient. But I think that
He's still
even in
inconvenient
main,
today. That King
still
has a lot of things to say
inconvenient.
today.
I think it's very difficult, and I think that we are called to kind of continue to like raise the flag and to say,
Yeah.
hey, not only was there king in Atlanta, but I don't think enough has been written about king in Chicago.
Yeah. Hmm.
We don't talk
Oof.
about poverty, and we don't want to talk about that part. And so
Yep.
I
Yep.
think we have a call to make sure that we remember that and kind of continue to remind people about King in the wilderness.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so
Yeah.
funny. I was just checking emails and I just saw where church is having a day of service, and on the side it was like a day of service, and this will include sheetrock and plumbing work and so and so. It's like you're not asking people to come work on the church on King Day as a day of service, but that is where we are, and
Yeah.
I think that we have a moral mandate for those of us who know the real King, right? To
Yep.
kind of say, hey, there's another side to this story.
I mean, humans tend to sanitize their prophets. That seems like what we've done throughout a lot of history to Dr. King. I mean, there was this guy named Jesus who seems like he's been sanitized in the same way, and we want the nice, safe, quotable
Hmm.
version. We don't want the one that's actually going to challenge the
Hmm.
powers that be, let alone our individual biases and assumptions and approaches. So I feel like there's a hermeneutic of how do we peel back the layers of not just Dr. King, but when we do it with Dr. King, when we realize there's the real King then can speak real truth now, that's an approach we can take to so many other prophetic voices throughout human history.
Yeah,
So talk about your sermon.
great.
Maybe specifically, you mentioned you wrote this one early. Thanks. I
Ooh,
know we made you jump through a few hoops of like gotta know when to push the button.
I
Well, you're doing some
know.
cool stuff, is what it sounds like. You're playing with sound in the sermon. We're gonna
So
hear some things.
so it's one of those situations in full transparency. It's one of those situations where I submitted my sermon title and my text without really thinking about the text.
Been there.
And ooh, yeah, and so I've been digging it. I chose so let's try to like wrap this up. But I was inspired to find so I found this text by way of Handel's Messiah, part two, where there's this part two where he starts pulling text that talks about the sharing of the gospel, and so it starts with this great piece. Was the company of the preachers, and it's like this militaristic kind of like dun, 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 march, and then it goes into how beautiful are the feet of them that carry the gospel, and then it goes into um, their sound has gone out into the earth and into the ends of the world. I want to confess and say Handel's Messiah was the first time that I actually heard those words, which comes out of Psalm 19 or 14. And Paul picks it up in Romans chapter 10 when he's trying to build this defense to get support from the church at Rome to help him carry the gospel. And at this time, he's having this difficulty with getting early Jewish believers to kind of move over a little bit into the pew to allow Gentiles to come sit with them. And so he's having this conversation with himself about, you know, well, have the Jews actually heard the gospel? Have they heard the word preached already? Have the Gentiles understood? And he makes this case to say, yes, the Gentiles have heard the word because the sound has gone out into all the earth. And I'm interpreting that as there is this message that one is not limited just to the proclamation of preaching, but even if we don't preach, that creation is speaking, that even if we will keep silent, that the rocks will cry out, that even as Jesus was coming up from the grave, the Bible says that, and there was a great earthquake, right? And so creation is speaking. And if we look around today, even though there are all of these ugly voices in the world, I yet believe that when we look around, we can still see that God is still doing something good in the world. Um, and a part of this is, as I've been reading Wallace's book, I think about the kitchen table experience with Dr. King. And Dr. King says that I picked up the phone one night and there was this ugly voice on the other side of the phone. So I'm thinking about all of the ugly voices in our society right now. And then by the end of that kitchen table story, he says, he closes the sermon with recalling the words of a hymn that says, I've seen the lightning flash, I've heard the thunder roll, I've heard sin breakers dashing, trying to conquer my soul, but I heard the voice of Jesus telling me to still fight on. And so I'm walking through this dichotomy of the ugly voice on the other side of the phone, and then in the kitchen table experience, I heard another voice. And I think that's where we live, that there are times in life where we all encounter these ugly voices. And yet, in the face of all of these ugly voices, we're coming to church on Sunday morning because I heard another voice. And that is the sound of freedom, the sound of hope. It's the sound of faith that's telling us to fight on. And so I'm thinking about all of the masses of people who would go in the rain to a mass meeting on a Monday night during the bus boycott because they wanted to hear Dr. King, right? And so there is no sustained civil rights movement without the proclamation of preaching. And it's not just the preaching of one person, it's the gathering of what happens when we sing together, when we work together. There is no movement without singing, without preaching, without, it's not just a manifesto, right? It's that sound that we make together. And so that's where my sermon is for Sunday. The sound has gone out into all the earth and into the ends of the world.
Everything about that. So, I love the way the sonic nature and how you're bringing in sound from Handel's Messiah and the you've heard the preaching and the sound of that phone call and hearing this other voice and even hearing you say there's no civil rights movement without these sounds. It makes me think of Mahalia Jackson, you know, who was a singer and also was the voice you can hear on that March Washington saying, "Tell them about the dream." Whew.
Tell them about the dream. And okay, I know we have to go. One of the book. If you're watching this, King's Vibrato by I think it's Maurice Wallace. I hope I got his name right. Um, Powerful book. And one of the things that makes you cry, speaking of the importance of sound, he goes into this chapter where he analyzes Precious Lord by Thomas Dorsey. I'm reading this chapter trying to figure out where is he going with this. And it is very well the case that King is standing on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel and he looks down to talk to the saxophonist who's going to play that night and tells him, I want to hear Precious Lord and play it pretty. And that's when he's assassinated.
Ooh.
So literally, like, his last words were the request to hear Precious Lord. And the group, this saxophonist whose name I can't remember, played for this group that was a part of the Breadbasket in Chicago's band. And they recorded a CD called King's Last Request. And that was his last words were, play Precious Lord. So think about so I want everyone to walk out of here thinking about the role of sound, voices, music. And I also want to be inclusive to say that even for those who may be hearing impaired, we all can still experience these vibrations in different ways.
Yeah. We can, yeah, that's right. The vibrations are present. Your body will pick them up, and there's ways to feel those vibrations. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I have to extend a thanks to First Baptist Church of Crown Heights for loaning you to us this Sunday. We are grateful that we get to borrow you and have you join our pulpit at Riverside. That is going to be such a gift to our community and everyone who engages
so much.
it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, this is great. I'm even more excited for what you're going to bring, and I already have written down that book that I'm going to look up on bookshop.org right after this call and get that added to my list next. That sounds like a really, really excellent read, especially this season of the year. Reverend Moore, thank you so much. We are all looking forward to having you on Sunday.
So
it is going to be wonderful.
Great. It was great to see you and great to connect with you, and happy King Weekend.
Happy King Weekend. Everyone watching, listening to this, join us for church at Riverside. I mean, go to wherever you want to go to church, especially if they're having a focus on King. But if you're looking for a place, we would love to have you at Riverside. If you're in the New York area, join us on site. If you're not in the New York area, but you've got the internet, you can join us online. Just go to trcnyc.org where you can learn more. We have a whole King Day happening, MLK Now happening in the afternoon. So that's all on the website as well, trcnyc.org. But really join us at 11 o'clock Sunday morning to hear what Reverend Moore is going to be bringing. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you then.